Welcome to Myers Metal Detectors, located in sunny Tampa, Florida, where we sell nothing but fun and adventures, treasure hunting gear, and anything you can imagine for metal detecting. Give us a call, 813-237-1939. Happy hunting and dig deeper.
Live from sunny Florida, it's Treasure Talk.
Welcome, folks. Welcome to another exciting edition of Treasure Talk. And boy, do we have a show lined up today, don't we, Joe?
Absolutely. We got some stellar folks coming on shortly.
Yeah, we've been lucky. We've had them at our metal detecting club meeting, and KT and Sid are awesome. So if you ever get the opportunity to meet them in person, you want to do that. If they're doing a program somewhere, just make sure you take the time and go here, because it's just an awesome story, an awesome treasure adventure for sure. So I guess I better get started real quick so we can roll through this. Of course, today's show is brought to you by your friends at Myers Metal Detectors, and the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the Treasure Talk guests and members belong solely to the guest and member, and not necessarily to Phil Myers, Jocelyn Myers, Jeff Monin, Joe Beasy, or Myers Metal Detectors. And of course, the purpose of Treasure Talk is to promote the hobby of metal detecting and treasure hunting, and to educate our members in a fun, informative manner. And today we're going to just do that, aren't we, Joe?
Absolutely. And Phil, before we bring in KT and Sid, just wanted to shout out to a few guys that are already on the chat here. Tim Naylor, Ricky Tumbleson, Lutherate Treasure Hunter, Shannon Bortner, and Robert Ridgway II. We also have here Michael Boyles, Jerry Purdy, Rick Shivari from beautiful Clearwater, Scott Kiefer, Phil Faircloth, Detecting Show with Johnny O, Gary Kerr, Ray Jones. And for you folks that are on Facebook that have not let them put your name on there, we'd appreciate it if you do so. That way it makes it easier for all of us to know who you are. But I do have the Digging Fraziers on there, Chief Digger, Gary Gross. All righty, Phil, take her away.
All righty, I got one thing to do before we bring on KT and Sid, and that is Garrett had an announcement they're having a new detector release, and I guess that's tomorrow. I don't know anything about it, but they're having a release. Go to their website and you can sign up for their opening, their debut of it, so you can see it. That's Garrett Metal Detectors. Just Google that and go to their website. But right now, I'm going to bring on our guest today, and here we go. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Well,
Hey, Sid and KT, good to see you guys.
Great to see you too.
yeah, everybody at the club really loved your presentation there. So I was reminding our members if they have the opportunity to see you guys do a program. Are you doing any coming up?
Oh, actually, we're going to be doing one here in Celebration, probably October.
Okay.
But nothing in your neck of the woods.
Well, yeah, we've got the big thing in Key West coming up.
Well, yes. Okay. This year is the 400th anniversary of the sinking of the Nuestra Senora de Atocha, which we're going to tell you about, share some of our personal stories of finding $500 million worth of treasure. And that's September 6, 1622, she sank right off of Key West, Florida. And there's a big get together down there for that whole first week of September. Book signings by various authors, Atocha authors, and lots of festivities for Mel Fisher Days. So hopefully you will find your way down there to enjoy the celebration and the history and the fun. And a lot of other treasure hunters and seekers will be there as well.
And you're going to be there that week?
We sure will. Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Awesome.
Sounds like a lot of fun there.
Well, Key
Well,
West
you know,
is
it's
a
hard
fun
not to have
place.
fun in Key West. Hard not to have fun there. And of course,
Yeah.
all the crew, as Mel would call us, the Atocha Golden Crew, will all be there. And the stories will fly, some of them true. So we'll be all there, as well as the new crew and all the people that have been part of this history finding event.
Yeah, that would be cool to go to that. And of course, my wife's family's from Key West. She tells me daily, we need to go to Key West. So that would be a
Time. This is the
perfect reason to go down there and buy one of those real nice coins from you.
yeah.
That would just be awesome.
Yeah, you need to get one of those $150,000 gold coins that they have.
Well,
I'll let you pick that one up, Joe.
yeah, they range from all shapes, sizes, and prices. But yes, some of the gold coins from the Atocha are up to $250,000 because they're so rare. But that's another story to talk about.
Absolutely.
For sure. So why don't we, we're going to turn it over to you and you can tell us a little bit about your adventures there.
Well, since we introduced ourselves, both Katie and I are going to go off screen so that our iPad, which is going to display the pictures behind you, so it kind of gets the colors right. So we're gonna pop out, but you'll still be able to hear us, and we'll describe what's going on. So I'm going to slide off to the side. Katie will do the same.
The magic of electronics here. So there you go. Now you can see the picture. Now, as we alluded to, both Sid and I were part of Mel Fisher's Treasure Salvers, part of the search for and recovery of the Nuestra Señora de Atocha and the Santa Margarita. This was a 16-year search that Mel had put on for the Atocha from late 1969, 1970, until when we found her July 20th, 1985. So just last week, we had another one of those anniversaries of this great event. And this particular picture is of that day, of the day that we found the main pile, actually the day after. Mel came out and we all celebrated. But we want to share with you a little bit of what that day was like. From our point of view, using our personal pictures and our stories of what it was like to be there the day we finally found the Atocha main pile.
We'll set up the story a little bit for you. We had been working along a trail, a very thin trail of artifacts for many miles across the seafloor. And you can see some of the salvage and recovery vessels all tied together in one spot in this picture. But actually, we were hopscotching down this trail. One boat would find some artifacts and the next boat would move further along the trail. We were exploring anomalies that had been generated by earlier surveys using magnetometers as well as side scan sonars. And there's so much trash, garbage, and modern debris out there that all really slowed us down because we were finding mostly modern things. And a lot of the natural features on the seafloor look a lot like ballast piles. And we had to eliminate all of that as we were going along. So what this picture shows right now, you see all of the company boats anchored over one spot. And that is what it looked like the day after we found the main pile. You see the Magruder, the Swordfish, the Dauntless, and the Virgilona all anchored right on top of where that ballast pile came. We knew we were getting close. Katie may have something to say about that.
No, I was just saying that you were talking about how much junk was out there. Modern junk, old junk, fishermen, lobstermen, etc. had dropped a lot of garbage off into the ocean. We're 40 miles out to sea, and this area was used for commercial fishing as well as bombs in bombing practice in World War II and even present day. So there was lots of metal everywhere. And as good metal detector aficionados know, you have to dig up every hit. You don't know what that's going to be. You might have a discriminator on your detector, but you can be fooled, and the detector can be fooled. So if it's ringing, you better be digging, and that's what we did. Every hit would be dug up, and good thing, because there happened to be a bomb very close, a World War II bomb very close to a very important spot for us.
Yeah, the main pile of both the Margarita and the Atocha had 500-pound bombs on them, which we had discovered with our magnetometers. We found that later when we were diving on those sites. But yep, we found lots of modern stuff which had to be cleared off, and that masked the presence of the old material that we were looking for. So we finally found this ever-increasing trail. All of a sudden, we started to find lots of ballast stones. The divers on the bottom using their detectors are finding broken barrel hoops and intact barrel hoops and bronze or copper ingots and coins. And it was just a matter of time till we stumbled upon the actual main pile. So this picture right here, you can see it was taken at the time. There you can see a fellow coming up the dive ladder, and there's another person hanging on the anchor line in the background. And that's Andy Matrosi and Greg Wareham. They're actually the fellows that first saw the Atocha main pile. They were working under the Dauntless, which was excavating, and they were using their metal detectors in that excavation. The Swordfish, which Katie and I were on, had just anchored just to the south of the Dauntless's position, and we were getting ready to set up and excavate there when Andy and Greg swam away from the Dauntless, anticipating that there was something big nearby, and actually they stumbled onto the main pile of the Atocha. They waved their detectors over the top of it. It rang like crazy, and they came straight up, not to find the Dauntless, but they found us anchored there. They came up and said, "It's all here. It's right underneath you." We said, "What is?" They said, "The whole main pile. It's right here." You won't see me in this picture because I'm already on the bottom. You can see KT and some of the other swordfish divers who were already timed out from earlier diving, but that didn't stop them from getting in the water.
Well, that's true. We all immediately put our gear on, slapped it on as fast as we could, didn't care that we were all saturated, shouldn't be back in the water for a while. It didn't matter to us. We dove down to the bottom, 60 feet down, and everywhere were silver bars. There were mounds of silver bars. There were individual silver bars. I can see here blackened bread loaves, sort of the size of a Wonder Bread, but 80 to 90 pounds loaves of Wonder Bread. Solid silver. Well, okay, 98% silver, 2% platinum. Very, very high quality silver. And strewn all over. Then there's a couple of silver bars off on the side, and another diver and myself, JJ Betancourt, said, "We got to bring one up. That's it." And we went over the silver bar and we tried to pick it up, and of course we couldn't. It was way too heavy. And everybody has this idea that things are lighter underwater. Well, so are you. It's a relative thing, and you're not going to be able to have any more ability to bring it up than if you did on the surface. So Greg Wareham came over, the guy who found the main pile. He came over and dropped our weight belts, and we inflated our BCs, and we kicked like hell to get to the surface as best we could. And now we're at the surface with a 90-pound silver bar. We're not anywhere near the boat or over near the dive ladder. There's nobody left on the boats because they're all on the bottom looking at the treasure. We have no air left, so we can't take the silver bar back down to the bottom. We can't get over to the boat, and we can't drop the silver bar because everybody we know is on the bottom. So eventually we sort of wallowed our way over to the dive ladder and pulled ourselves up with this 90-pound bar. And it was the first silver bar brought up from the Atocha that day. And we did realize, as we surveyed the situation, that this was a chance, one chance in a lifetime to get it right. Not only how we excavated the site, but all the information that was there. Because as we sort of looked over those top pieces, those top silver bars, as we removed those underneath, they were stacked just like they had been packed in the ship 400 years ago, in the same order, in the same pile. And this was our opportunity to document how the ship was laden, how she was packed, what that cargo said to us as we found it peeling away the layers. And so that day, after the fury of activity and excitement, we decided we must do archaeology. And we set about that from that day on, making sure that every artifact was photographed and drawn in situ, and that information was recorded, and an artifact tag was put to it, and all that information was gathered and combined, so we knew where that artifact, that silver bar, that coin chest, those individual pieces of people's lives, we knew where they came from in history as well as where they came from the wreck. We did maritime or marine archaeology like they would do in the pyramids in Egypt.
There were some amazing finds there. If you look at this picture, we've actually excavated down a little bit. We used devices called airlifts. And at this point, we didn't really need to use metal detectors because there was so much metal around, the detectors would go off constantly. So unless we are in the periphery of the artifacts, we tended just to excavate and not use metal detectors at this point. And so what we've excavated down to, and you can see there are two actual intact chests, one in the foreground, one in the rear. And it was amazing. We had no idea that we'd find actual intact chests. We did find the remnants of intact chests on the Santa Margarita years earlier, but there was no wood left. The coins were just fused into the shape that they had been in. And that was the same on the 1715 fleet. There had been portions of chests found on the cabin wreck and other sites there, but the wood had not survived. And so we were amazed to find this intact wood, intact chest. And all we had to do was take a putty knife and a hammer. The chests were just simply nailed together with very small nails. And all we had to do was just tap where the nails were, and they were so corroded that they just popped apart, and we could very gently open the chests up. So here's another couple of chests that were on the bottom, and you can see an intact one right next to one that the wood has actually been was damaged during the wreck. We did not remove that wood. That was just a component of the wreck of the Atocha. But inside you can still see the circles of all those Spanish coins. Each one of those chests weighed about 175 pounds. So they're very heavy. And they were held together in a mass. The coins on the outside were all held together by a combination of calcareous, concretion, and silver sulfide. And but the coins, as we would learn later, when they were brought back to the lab, once that outer layer of coins was removed through electrolysis, the coins inside were like brand new. They were mint condition, literally, which was also unexpected.
Well, what's important also is in each one of these chests were a couple thousand, sometimes 2,500 silver coins. 8 reals, 4 reals, 2 reals, 1 reals, all the denominations that the Spanish produced back then, all handmade in the mountains of Potosí and also in Mexico. Every coin was rolled out, taking that silver bar and making it into a blank, and then it was cut to the proper size and approximate weight. Then they put that blank on top of a die and another die on top, and whack it real hard with a hammer. And then the assayer, who left his initial on the coin, would chisel it to the proper weight. He got to keep what he chiseled off. And that's where the term chiseler comes from, someone who would chisel off too much. And that did happen back then, because we don't happen to have a corner on graft and inappropriate behavior by politicians in this present day. They had lots of it back then. And so these coins were all unique, all handmade, no two alike, and most incredibly, the first year production of one mint, Santa Fe de Bogota in Colombia, all of the coins of that first year production were lost on the Atocha. And until we found those coins in 1985, no one knew it had opened in 1622. That's where those $250,000 gold coins come from, because there were 4 mint condition or proof set coins on the Atocha. And we found them, and no one had ever known they existed. And those are the ones that unknown to history until we found them. And those are the ones that are $250,000 each.
So KT and Sid, who was taking the pictures?
Well, that's a good question. Katie and I and all the divers, we had lots of Nikonos cameras. This particular picture was taken by Don Kincaid, who was a staff photographer. He'd also done a lot of work for National Geographic, so he came out early on and was just kind of free swimming around taking pictures of the activities that were going on. But the actual individual photographs that were taken, we recovered in just 1 year almost 200,000 artifacts that came up off the main pile area, and every one of those items had its photo taken before it was removed. in addition to being drawn in, as well as being tagged and measured in. So a big job. It was like an underwater construction site. So what you see here are three of us. That's myself, KT, and another diver that are working there. And we're trying to remove the remains of a coin chest off of the top of the main pile area. There's a lot of other worked silver that's right adjacent to it. It's very difficult to walk around and maneuver this 175-pound weight on very fragile stuff. So it took three of us to move this and move it away to where it could be loaded on a lift to be brought up to the surface.
The main pile itself, and if you can picture this, was 40 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 5 feet high of solid silver. And in amongst all that silver were personal artifacts. We found shoes, we found pipes, we found dishes that still had the last meal that had been served on board the Atocha. Now, the Atocha had left Havana on September 4th of 1622, and by September 6th, she was on the bottom of the ocean. So they didn't have a lot of time to have get set and have everyday meals and get ready for that long voyage home. But there were some everyday things that were going on.
There's Katie working with another diver, measuring in another coin chest. He's writing down the coordinates that she's giving him underwater before that item is going to be removed and brought to the surface, as we described before. So this is excavating. It looked like kind of being in a snowstorm underwater. The diver in the background is using a device called an airlift, which is about a 40-foot long PVC pipe. It's maybe 8 inches in diameter. And compressed air is brought down from the surface to the business end of this tube. And as the air rises up in the tube, not only does it keep the tube in a vertical condition, but that air rushing up through the tube draws water in with it, and it creates a very strong suction. We did not use airlifts to vacuum up artifacts. We did use these for removing sediment because we wanted to clear the artifacts from sediment. We didn't want to remove the artifacts and vacuum them up. So these tubes did not go all the way to the surface. They just sucked up sediment. And then that sediment, once it came out of the top of the tube, just kind of rained down on us the whole time that we're working. And so it was kind of like being in a real gentle snowstorm the whole time. When you get 4 or 5 airlifts working at the same time down there, it was like being in a blizzard pretty much underwater. But you can see actual timbers of the ship, the lower hull structure of the ship starting to become apparent as we work down into the ballast pile.
We actually had not just the snowstorm, but one day, one of the divers at the end of his time on the bottom had just propped up the airlift on the bottom, leaving the valve on just a little bit, so it still suctioned up the sand and sediment a bit, but kept it in the upright position, making it easy for the next person to come down and start working. Little did that person know that he stuck it into the bottom where there happened to have been a bag of emeralds that had gone, had sunk with the Atocha, a whole big sack of emeralds, the sack long gone, but now the emeralds had been sucked up into the airlift, and it was actually raining emeralds on everybody on the bottom while they were working.
Interesting.
We found over 10,000 uncut emeralds.
So here's a picture.
So that those emeralds went up in that pipe as it was sucking up the sediment on the bottom, or?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and then they just raised, because as Sid said, those airlift tubes are only about 40 feet long, and we're in 60 feet of water, so it would just come out the top and
Drift back down.
Drift back down, and all of a sudden you look up and you're going, I'm being rained on by emeralds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Look
awesome.
like green gravel.
Yeah.
So here is a photo. This was taken off to the side, not amongst the artifacts that were where the high density area was. And you can see on this diver's arm, he's a pretty busy guy. There's a detector loop. He found this item using a detector And now he's trying to excavate it out of the mud. And he's got a smaller caliber airlift that he's using in one hand. He's already put the detector away or got it off on the side. You can see the loop on his other arm. And he's using his free hand to fan gently around this piece. It's actually a silver pitcher or ewer that he found with a metal detector. And he's gently using the airlift to expose it so it can be measured in and photographed in situ. So remember, we did this with over 200,000 artifacts just the first year that we found the thing. And that process of recovery went on at that level for several years after that before it started to peter out. So
You would think that silver or these artifacts would ring really loud on a metal detector. And that's not necessarily the case. If a whole bunch of cannonballs are near each other, they sort of cancel each other out. Their polarity cancels each other out. Whole bunch of even spikes near each other can cancel each other out. And even a whole bunch of silver bars later on, a little farther away from the main pile, under 5 feet of mud, I found 12 silver bars that were all stacked on top of each other under 5 feet of mud. And it just gave a little growl. That was just a little, that was all it was. I went, And we started digging away. We got the airlift out, and it was just a small hum, a small growl. And eventually, as we got closer to it, it was louder and louder. So even because they've been underwater so long, and they've been near each other, and each one has its own polarity.
the ferrous stuff.
The ferrous stuff. They don't always react and aren't as loud as you think they would be.
KT, I'm sorry. I have a question from Rick Tumbleson. He wants me to ask you guys about, have you ever found the Stern Castle?
Well, I would have to say we probably did many years ago. 1982, well, actually prior to 1982, we found up in the sands. Now this would be about 8 miles away from where the main pile of the Atocha was found. Maybe closer to 6 miles away, but some distance. We found the gudgeons and the pintles of the rudder. That was certainly a part of the Stern Castle. We found lots of church gold up there. The famous Emerald Cross was found up there. Lots of other church gold was found up there. A lot of church silver was found up there. All stuff that would be in the Stern Castle, as well as lots of arquebuses and other arms. A lot of it, people's personal, very expensive swords the rich passengers would have had, as well as the higher members of the military that were on board. And that's all Stern Castle stuff. So I would say that we got into the Stern Castle pretty good back in the late 70s and early 80s, years ago. Mel had a thing he always talked about, that they were missing the Stern Castle. And I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate because of the things that we had found early on.
But there's always more to find.
There's always more to
You
find.
can never say you found everything.
That's right. And it's very, very deep sand up there. The sand is can get upwards of 18 to 20 feet deep. So it's very difficult digging, and it's real easy to miss stuff. So again, more pictures of working underwater. You can see the 3 divers working there. Here's actually a side cut. This is as if you cut a cake and peeled away the piece that you cut off. So you're looking at a stratigraphic representation of the Atocha main pile, or at least a portion of it. And you see all those dark blobs. Those are all ballast stones. There was over 200 tons of ballast stone in the lower portion of the ship. You can see wood timbers exposed. You can see the ballast stone. And what we've done is we've executed a vertical cut, and we're working along this cut face, working through the ballast pile to expose the various layers of artifacts that are associated with it. So kind of interesting to see the whole thing. That 200 tons of ballast stone had to be removed by hand. Every one of those stones had to be carried off underwater, which was quite a job, as you can imagine.
Now, you're probably wondering, now why would a ship need all that 200 tons of rock? Well, just like today, we have weighted keels on sailboats to counterbalance the sails. And that was the same purpose of these ballast rocks. And ballast rocks are a great indication of a shipwreck. You don't find river rocks in the ocean. And so if you come across a mound of river rocks somewhere out in the ocean, you have just found yourself a ballast pile and probably a shipwreck, which would be probably 1700s. By the 1800s, they started using brick and iron, etc., for the weight in the bottom of the ship. But those early ships of 15, 16, and 1700s filled full of river rock, and they're the dead giveaway that you have just stumbled across a shipwreck.
So this is how we actually brought the heavy items up. There's a lift basket, and in the basket, as it clears the water, you can see, number one, the basket has been padded with foam to protect the artifact as it comes up. And that coin chest originally had wood around it. That wood, although intact, was fairly soft, and because the chest weighed 175 pounds, it took real care not to damage the wood. So we removed the wood underwater and put it in a separate bag to be brought up. And then so it could be reassembled all back in the lab. So here's one of those heavy chests being brought to the surface.
Does that wood sit in KT? Once it's dried, is it able to stay intact, or once it hits the air, it disintegrates?
Well, if you let it hit the air, it would disintegrate. The wood was red cedar, and it actually was so well preserved you could see the saw marks in it when it was cut into planks. We have to go through a very extensive restoration process with wood, and kind of to quickly say it, we use this chemical called PEG, polyethylene glycol. It comes in different molecular weights, and what causes the wood to shrink and crack is that when you take a piece of wood out of the water, the cellular structure starts to dry out, and then the cells start to collapse, and so you start to get big cracks, and it starts to shrink and warp as the cell walls collapse. What the PEG does is it fills the voids inside the cellular structure and keeps them from collapsing, so the wood will retain its original look and dimensions. But if you don't do that, the wood would be destroyed.
Now,
Hey, I've got a question here for you guys. Jocelyn just gave it to me. How long were you able to stay? Would a diver be able to stay down on the bottom?
well, that's a good question. We're at 60 feet, and the Navy tables at that time said you had 60 minutes at 60 feet, and then you became saturated with nitrogen, and you'd have to come up and spend 2 hours on the surface off-gassing, having the nitrogen gradually come out of your system, and then you could go back down again for half of that time, and then because you retained about half of the nitrogen, and you go back down again. So in a day's time, without getting too technical, you could probably do 5 to 6 dives a day. That'd be 2.5 to 3 hours a day at 60 feet, repetitive dives. And so we would have a crew of about 6 people that would rotate through. We didn't have dive teams. We didn't dive with other people. That wasn't important. Matter of fact, you tried to stay away from each other. As you all well know, somebody else with a metal detector is going to set yours off. So you stayed as far away. But I wanted to go back to the polyethyl glycol that Sid was talking about, because women will understand this. PEG is in our face cream. That same cream, that same PEG is used to plump up our cells in our face and fill in those old cells as we get older and we start showing wrinkles. That PEG does the same thing for us as it does for the wood that's off of these ships.
So here are some coin chests that have been recovered, and they're on the back deck of the boat waiting to be taken in. The good thing about silver is that as soon as it's removed from the ocean, it stops corroding right then. A lot of items that we recover, you cannot do this with. It's particularly all of the ferrous objects. They must be kept in water until they go into the lab, because otherwise they will continue to degrade and their corrosion will actually accelerate once they're exposed to air. But the good thing about silver is that it pretty much goes to neutral once it comes out of the water. So we didn't have that problem with these small silver bars or these coin chests, and all this stuff was going to go to the lab and get processed anyway. There were, before the boat went in, for the course of this picture, you can see them laid out there, but there was actually another big giant piece of foam that was put over the top of them and was kept wet just to preserve them as much as possible for the trip in.
Hey, I have a question from Michael Boyles. He's asking where you guys are going to be at in celebration.
It is part of their lifelong learning program that they have, and that's going to be in October, and it'll be at the town hall. If you go on lifelong learning, we will be part of their lecture series.
Oh, cool.
We had to figure out where to put all the treasure. Now there's 47 tons of silver, and we're trying to bring that in, and we have to be careful to keep our workboats balanced. So we had to lay out the silver bars along the gunnels. We had them down below on our bunks. We had silver bars and coin chests everywhere on the boat to try to balance out the load so that we would not become top heavy or imbalanced, which was a real problem, hard to imagine.
Now remember, we didn't come in at night and we didn't go back to port at night. We would stay out for weeks at a time. And so as the accumulated recoveries were being brought on board the boats, just as Katie said, the weight of some of these was pretty hefty. Yeah. So we had to take real care because there were big storms that would come out while we were out there working, and we didn't want our own boats to become unstable as we were collecting up some of the heavy artifacts.
The coins, some of the coin chests were broken apart, and here's an example of those blackened coins. Like Sid was talking about, they have that silver sulfide and calcareous incretion on them, and they are stable, as he said, once they come to the surface, which is good for you all to know when you're detecting over on the beach in the 1715 fleet, which is between Sebastian and Fort Pierce, basically. If you find coins on the beach, they're stable once you've found them. You don't have to worry about it. Yes, there's a cleaning process, but they're not going to get any worse once out of the water. And these coins were just broken out of a coin chest. And what was amazing to us, because we found so many coins and found them in these big Tootsie Rolls or these big conglomerates of coin chests that once broken apart, they're like the day they were made. This is just slightly tarnished. And this is right off the bottom. Nothing's been done to this coin. It just needs to be polished up. And you can see the shield of the king. This is Philip II. And P for Potosi. Philip II, Deo Gracias Hispaniarum. Philip, by the grace of God, King of Spain. And on the backside, Et Indirum Rex, King also of the Indies. So it was a political statement, and all of the countries that he was dominant over and had reign over were in his shield. So you could tell a lot about what was going on in the world by the coins.
So again, we had a huge task of mapping all this stuff in, and my primary function out at sea was to
After diving.
Was mapping in, taking all this data and making charts out of it so we could identify what part of the wreck we were working on and which artifacts were associated with others. And so we developed a system very quickly for doing not only the triangulation of the artifacts, but also having a vertical representation as well. So the charts that we created are kind of like onion skins. They lift one and then another layer and then another layer, and that represented the layers that the artifacts were actually found in. So we had a vertical representation of the artifacts as well as a horizontal representation, so a 3D method of mapping everything in.
You can see here a little bit of a reduction of that chart because the chart's quite large, and as Sid said, multiple layers, sort of like you'd find in your biology textbook of one layer after another. But you can see here's where the footings and the ship's timbers were, the massive silver bars on top of them, some more of the wood that was found, copper ingots up here, gold and emeralds over here. Gives you a basic idea how the ship landed here And what's more amazing is after the first hurricane, the second hurricane came along a month later, and she took off up to the northwest, another 10 to 12 miles, and maybe farther. We haven't found the absolute end of that trail.
So the day after we found the main pile, Mel, who was in port, and his wife Dio, and a lot of the office staff decided that they wanted to come out and share in the celebration of us finally finding the main pile. Ironically, Jimmy Buffett was also nearby out at sea. He was using an old salvage boat of our own that had sunk up in shallow water, and he was considering using it for an album cover. And so he was over there taking some pictures of it, and he heard over the radio that we had found the Atocha and asked if he could come over and check it out. And so he came, and he arrived around the time that Mel arrived from in port with all of the media folks. And so taking some of the silver bars that had been recovered up to that point, we made kind of a bench of silver bars, as you can see there. And Jimmy Buffett played an impromptu concert sitting on the silver bars from the Atocha, and Mel sitting next to him. We were all pretty excited in general about everything that was going on out there. But you have to look at Mel and notice that he's not really smiling. He's probably considering the cost of finding the man pile, because, of course, he lost family members in the sinking of the North Wind early on in the search. He had a lot of problems with the government. Lots of money was spent, 25 different court cases spent fighting the state of Florida and the federal government over this. So it wasn't a find without great cost. So I suspect that's probably what he was thinking about, is Jimmy's playing along, playing Margaritaville.
Yeah. Hey, I have some questions here from Jocelyn handed me from Facebook. This one's from Tom Becker, and he said, did you guys have to worry about modern pirates robbing you since you were in one place for so long?
Well, yes. We always worried about pirates. There were pirate treasure hunters that would come out there if we were in port, because we had to go back for fuel or supplies. You know, there would be somebody lurking on the edge. But the biggest bloody pirates were, I'm sure Sid will agree, is the government. The government were the biggest pirates out of the whole thing. But yes, we did have to worry. The Coast Guard would come out occasionally and make sure everything was okay. We were required to have guns on board to protect ourselves.
Right. We, under our Admiralty law agreement, guns were required so we could self-protect. And the Coast Guard was required to respond immediately if we required them out there. We did have several characters that decided that they would try to run us off the site with guns. We've been shot at a few times out there, but fortunately, the Admiralty Court and the Coast Guard pretty much solved those issues. So.
And we are way offshore. People say, well, how can, you can go out there and find it. Well, we're 40 miles offshore, and it was hard for us to find it to begin with, much less, somebody coming out there without our technology that we had.
Right. So this is kind of a representation of what the lower hull of the Atocha would have looked like when it was being loaded. You can see the ballast stones in the bottom of the ship's hull, and the silver bars were just piled on top of there as part of the cargo. And then the foreground, those greenish things, are copper ingots. Those were actually produced in Cuba and were being taken back to Spain to be made into more bronze cannons. So this was originally part of an exhibit that we had in Key West to kind of show what the lower hull of the Atocha would look like as it was being loaded. So here, when we were out at sea all the time, we had no knowledge of how much publicity there was about this thing. It was a big deal, but we didn't know that. I mean, we're out at sea day after day after day, week after week after week working. And it wasn't until we came into port that we saw the massive numbers of people in the museum. They would, as our boats would pull up to the docks in Key West, there would be hundreds, sometimes thousands of people standing around to watch us unload. Here's a picture of me standing in the back of one of the company pickup trucks, and we just brought a load of silver bars over from the docks over to the museum, and we're going to offload them and take them into the conservation lab. And these folks are all just standing around looking at what's going on, and with they were as amazed as we were. And so we became great heroes overnight in Key West once this happened, as you could guess.
I can imagine all the people were going there because of that. Yeah, I have another question here, and I guess this one you guys could answer. How long were you in that area? And I guess, are they still doing it today?
Well, yes, the search continues. You're never going to find everything. I mean, they have found some gold coin. Oh, just last year, they found one of those very rare Santa Fe de Bogota gold coins that are worth $250,000.
With a metal detector.
With the metal. And you know which kind? Ah, well, we'll talk about that later. And continuing to search for the missing pieces. There's some cannons missing, some silver bars missing. It will go on forever as long as there's people interested, and as long as allowed to. Since finding the Margarita, the laws have changed. The Abandoned Shipwreck Act has changed everything. And so the days of going out and finding shipwrecks and bringing that history to light and sharing it with people are over. Mel and his operation are grandfathered in, both the 1715 fleet and the Atocha Margarita site, but there'll be no other privately funded salvage operations in the United States because of the Abandoned Shipwreck Act.
Yep, that started in 1991. All previously held Admiralty claim were grandfathered in, as Katie said, but nothing new. And everything now belongs to the government.
Oh, isn't that fun? Everything always belongs to the government. Well, it looks like we've got the banner up because perfect timing before you put the book up, because you're giving away a book. So I've already done the random name picker, as Jeff would do. So the first person who on my list here has got 3 minutes to text me on that number that's showing, and the name is Old Pilon, Pelon. I hope I'm saying that right. Is that right, Joe?
Opilan. Opilan.
Hey, Pilan. Okay.
Yeah, make sure that you, when you text Phil, that you put your first and last name on there. And then once you do claim your prize, you need to send an email to treasuretalkshow@gmail.com with all your pertinent information, your address, everything, your firstborn, whatever.
And if you weren't fortunate enough to win tonight, I do have those books available in my shop, so you could walk in and pick one up if you'd like to.
And we encourage people to check in on our website, which is Atocha Treasure Adventures. And there is an email there that if you want to get in touch with us, you have some other questions, looking for treasure or want questions about coins, please feel free to contact us. And we have a YouTube channel that shares a lot of these videos and photos and stories, because we found that people were really interested in what it was like from our point of view, from the point of view of people that were there. And that's what Sid's book, Sweat of the Sun, Tears of the Moon, represents and shares as his point of view of what it was like to be out there. And of course, I was there a bit too. And gives you that point of view, of feeling like you were actually there with us. And Coins of the Lost Galleons explains what the markings of the coins are about and be able to help you identify coins that you might find on the beach. So both of them are available.
I personally own both of those books. They're fantastic and informative reads. Take some time. I got a quick question from Rick Tumbleson again, and he wanted me to ask you guys about your Meg-tooth diving experience off of Venice Beach. Have you had any good luck? Because he's a big-time Meg-tooth collector.
Katie's going to grab a few and come back, I guess, and kind of show what we've been doing over there. We try to stay sharp in many ways. Obviously, a big component of detecting is also the visual component, right?
And concentration.
And concentration, focus on what you're doing. And so we use that as kind of a a warm up for when we're going out metal detecting.
Well, and it's just plain fun. It's just plain fun because it's just fun finding stuff. Here, I don't know, can you say, oh, there's one for you.
There you go, Ricky.
Oh, yeah. We go out with a group called Aristocat. It's a really nice, about 36-foot outboard catamaran. Great diving with them. They put us on the spot, and now this isn't really one, but I did win the big tooth award for one trip when I found the biggest megalodon tooth. So I'm looking for one this big in reality. I'm not going to be happy till we find one. Yeah. Right, Sid?
Right. Katie and I are always diggers at heart. So whether it's treasure or metal detecting or just finding anything, that's what we like to do, like you guys as well.
Oh, the thrill of, and even going detecting on the beach over between Vero or Sebastian and Fort Pierce, that thrill of you get a hit, you go, oh, this could be it, this is it, this is it. And it probably isn't, but you have fun looking for it and that anticipation of this is the one.
You never know what you're going to find.
Got to dig out every hit, though.
That's right.
That's why we love the hobby.
Well, it looks like old Pilon was here because he just texted me. So you know the drill. You got to email your information to what's the email, Joe?
Treasure Talk Show at gmail.com. And congratulations, Opalon. And make sure you put on there Opalon and your address and everything so that we can get that book sent out to you guys.
Hey, I got another question here. Jocelyn handed me. This one's from Gary Toledo. And he was talking about the government taking everything, being the biggest pirates. Can a new government come in and change the law?
I'm certain they could. It would have to be a law. The only reason that this law went into effect, we do not have line item vetoes available in our government as it stands. And so people who want to put laws that don't have a lot of public support, time them with bills that they know are going to get passed. And in 1991, there was a big bill that had to go through as part of keeping the government open. You know, they were running out of money and military needed money. And so they stuck this portion in with that bill. And so that's how it got passed. Yeah, it's possible that could happen. There have been some world perspective changes over the years as well. UNESCO is one of them. That's the UN. And at some point, the United Nations decided that it was unfair that private individuals or countries, not Spain, could recover and keep these items. Under Admiralty law, once you stop searching for or recovering a sunken wreck, after 50 years, you've lost title to it. And that was the original agreement, which is an international agreement that we worked under. But the United Nations,
hundreds of years old.
Yeah, it was a 600-year-old law. But the United Nations decided to ramp up support for allowing Spain to keep the artifacts themselves, and our country signed on with that UNESCO agreement. So that perspective would have to be dropped by our government, and the government would have to rescind the Historic Shipwreck Act, which pretty much says anything of historic nature or value belongs in state waters to the state, or in federal waters to the federal government, or the federal government can deed it to the parent country that the ship came from, i.e. Spain. If they want to do that, in my perspective, fair enough, but remember, Spain took all this stuff from the indigenous people over here, the Peruvians and the Mexicans. So it's surprising that the United Nations didn't make a play for them to get the material that was on these shipwrecks. But you may be aware that there's a giant argument right now going on off of Colombia over the San Jose, which is the Atocha is the richest galleon to have been found up to this point, but there is a bigger one out there called the San Jose, and it was much bigger than the Atocha, has vast amount of treasure on it. It was blown up in a sea battle with a group of British ships, and it sank in deep, deep water north of Colombia. And the Colombians, American group actually found it on the seafloor. The Colombians claim it, so Spain claims it. There's other groups that claim it. It's all going to end up in the courts, and who knows what's actually going to happen. It'll be
Probably
interesting.
end up on the bottom of the ocean where it is right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes of it.
Yeah, is that the one that's on the East Coast? Was it on the East Coast of Florida also?
No, it's
no.
off Colombia.
Oh, off of Columbia.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's called the San Jose. You can look it up online, and there's some really nice pictures taken. It's a very deep wreck. The ship itself blew up. One of the British ships got a lucky shot into the shot locker, or the powder locker of the San Jose, and the ship exploded and sank immediately with this vast amount of treasure on it. And so it's kind of scattered all over the seafloor, but they found large portions of it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a tough thing when the government is against you, and I guess Mel had to fight them the whole time.
Yep.
He did. He never gave up. He never lost focus.
Yeah, we had a very good Admiralty attorney. We never lost a battle as long as he was working with us. 25 different court cases versus the state and the federal government, and we won every one of them.
Yeah, that way you get to keep it, and private collectors can collect and purchase the coins. Now, I know you guys do sell some shipwreck coins, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, we, as divers, and as part of Mel's crew, as he calls us, his Atocha Golden Crew, we shared what was found. We got a division. That was part of our pay. And we all had some coins, some emeralds, silver bars, whatever, depending how long you were with the company, your position with the company, what you contributed, etc. And so Sid and I have sold quite a few of our pieces along the way so people can enjoy that history. People love the story, not just the story of the Atocha, not just the story of her finding and salvage, not just Mel's story against the government. It's sort of the combination of those three things. So people do enjoy that. They all come, they should, all shipwreck coins and artifacts should come with a certificate of authenticity and all the documentation and provenance that goes with it. So it is not just a hunk of silver or gold, but it tells a whole story of where it's been in history, and that story is brought to you through that documentation. So it's very important if people are looking for a piece of a shipwreck, that they make sure that they go as close to the primary source as possible, meaning the people that received the treasure. There are a lot of people out there that are selling it on eBay, etc. And you got to be very careful because they've probably bought and sold, that coin's been bought and sold several times. So it's not going to be as economical 3 or 4 people down the line. And who knows if all the documentation's with it and how authentic it is. So you must be careful.
Yeah, so you have to know who you're buying it from and make sure it has the documentation
Absolutely.
because all the things that came off the Atocha then would have a certificate of authenticity.
Absolutely. And sometimes they did, and through the years, it's been a while, people have lost that. And you just say, too bad, so sad, because they aren't recertifying them anymore. The people say, oh, take them to the Fishers, they'll recertify them. They went, no, not anymore. They got so overwhelmed with people losing their certificates, they said, we're not doing this anymore. We're done.
Right. Well, then it would, I guess, lose a lot of value from being
Yes.
on the
Well,
shipwreck.
well, it's like losing the title to your car. You got to have the
Right.
title to the car, otherwise it's a junker.
Well, it looks like we're at that hour, so I want to thank you guys for being on here with us. And there's the bird.
There's Dinkum. Yep.
Thank them. So thank you guys for doing this with us, and thank you for giving away the book as the prize. I know it's always fun seeing you guys, so hopefully our members can make it down to Key West, and I know Jocelyn wants to go down, so maybe you'll see me down there with you for that.
Awesome. Well, make
Hope so.
sure you go on to melfisher.com. There's lots of events that you need reservations for because they have a limit of how many people can be at that particular facility. So make sure you go to melfisher.com and
Okay.
it'll have all the information about what's going on and when it's happening. We look forward to seeing everybody. And if there's any of your group that listen to the podcast and come down, I hope they'll come up to us at the book signing, which is going to be September 4th, I believe, and introduce themselves and say, hey, we saw you on Treasure Talk.
Awesome, for sure. So thank you, Sid and KT, and thank you, Joe. And of course, next week I'm going to have Jeff back. We'll be back on the show, and we're going to have Steve's detector rods. So that should be fun too. And thank you, Jocelyn, for helping me here. And I guess you want to say goodbye, Joe?
Yeah. Thank you so much, KT and Sid. It's always a pleasure to see you guys. And your wonderful stories and your books are phenomenal. And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers out there. Appreciate
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you guys and everybody else. We sure enjoy spending some time with you all.
Awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you. And
Thank
with
you.
that, I'm going to close it because I'm past the 8 o'clock time limit there. So we'll
it.
see you
Everyone
guys.
have a blessed evening and happy hunting.
Happy hunting and dig deeper. So hopefully it ends on its own.